Well, welcome everyone in. Alexis Nunez here alongside one of my regular partners in crime, Shaka, and we have a very special guest and someone that I think plays such an integral part in exactly what we're trying to achieve with this kind of a conversation and with this kind of a talk, I suppose. And it is Stephen Levy. Stephen is a good friend of ours that we've known for a few years now. He's my fellow Salvadoreño, as well. As you guys may know, I'm Jamaican Salvadoreña too. And Stephen, you just absolutely had an amazing organization, non-profit organization, we must say, AFJA, that really helps a lot of the, I want to say, impoverished communities going on in El Salvador, but as well as Central America.
No, well, first of all, thank you both for the time. I know it's been probably 2 years since we got to meet out here in LA and share some pupusas together, just on Wilshire before we all found ourselves making Zoom calls and transitioning to a remote world. But thank you for welcoming me into this platform, into the conversation. And I think, starting off with who we are and who I am the president, as you said, of AFJA, an organization based here in Los Angeles that dedicates itself to collecting new and gently used youth soccer equipment for the purpose of establishing cost-free soccer academies in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and with aspirations to really hit impoverished communities throughout North America and in the world, really. And it's really just focusing on using sports and soccer as a vehicle for social change.
I think what you've seen over the last couple of months, you've come to recognize the interconnection between what are essentially human rights. Right now, we're talking about Black lives and the rights of equality around Black lives, and in particular, in this moment, at the hands of law enforcement. But you also have recognized how the uplifting of Black lives uplifts all those other aspects of our humanity which have been trampled on and have been devalued. I wanted to know, or I'd like you to explain how you're using sport to uplift those lives in communities that you know only too well from your own time in El Salvador, why it's important to you. How did you first get involved?
I was born here in Los Angeles, and first of all, born with an immense amount of privilege in comparison to my own family members and people that come from El Salvador. And even though I was born here, I still experience the disparities that exist between people that immigrate to this country, like my mother and father, in search of a better life for their family and for just themselves, just a higher quality of life. And it was the experiences that I witnessed as a child, traveling back to El Salvador, to my grandmother's house in the rural countryside and playing the beautiful game and just having fun with kids that looked just like me and were the same age, that really inspired what would become AFJA. And it's really just those experiences from my upbringing that fueled this drive to establish something that used the world's game, something that you can go to any continent, really. I even think even in Antarctica, they're playing football, and it's like you can really go to any continent on our planet and somebody's playing this game. And it doesn't matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can connect with somebody through the game. And the power of this game to unite people is really something that is instrumental in the work that we do. And it has its pros and cons. It has a real power to unite and organize people.
Both communities have experienced a lot more similarities than they probably have differences. And Stephen, as someone, like you said, my mom is Salvadoreña. She left El Salvador, moved to Jamaica, married my father, of course, had me. So she luckily never had to experience probably some of what your parents may have experienced in the United States as immigrants. In Jamaica, we have a motto that says, out of many, one people. And that is true. Out of many, we are one. And because of history, you've got a lot of Chinese, a lot of Indians. You've got, of course, got those from African descent and whatnot. But to the United States, I suppose, it was different. So what was that experience like for your family? And probably for you, that I realized that a lot of second generation Latinos, or probably people who are Latino but born in the United States, a lot of people constantly go, where are you from?
Yeah, you said it's parallels, right? It's like we're really on different roads that have been segmented, even though there are really intersections where we meet And there are issues that affect both of our communities and just affect us as people. And all of us are victimized because of the structures that we're operating under. And those intersections are often overlooked in an effort to divide us. And if it were highlighted about those issues, you know, those issues that exist on that intersection between the Black community, the Latinx community, I think this movement would be a lot more amplified. But the emphasis on dividing us is so high. You know, you see street vendors being harassed by members of the Black community, those images being amplified in an effort to divide our communities. And it's very surgical. It's very, very much, it's always about dividing us, as opposed to amplifying the unification between the two communities.
And Stephen, just, you know, the Latinx community is a very diverse one, both here in the US and throughout Central America. But how has events over recent months and this focus on the Black Lives Matter movement, how has that impacted your communities specifically?
I think specifically with the Central American community, with the Salvadoran community, we have a very big population here in Los Angeles. And with the murder of George Floyd, it was, again, a divide between, even within the Latino community, for those that wanted to use that opportunity to, you know, be witness to what was happening and join the Black community in breaking down these structures and really calling attention and using our voice to call attention to the issues that are affecting our neighbors. You know, we live on the same block, we live in the same city here in Los Angeles. And on the other side of the coin, it was the Latino community that's using this time to say, what about us? You know, what about our issues? When in reality, it's all lives matter when Black lives matter, really. And how can we use this moment to bring attention to the issues that we have been fighting against for centuries, as well as join the Black community in the issues that are affecting specifically the Black community. We are products of colonialism, the West Indies, right? All from the south of the border all the way down, even in the United States, we are all products of colonialism. And these ideas of colorism and casting away people from a lower class or a different shade of skin is coming from those times when, you know, countries like Spain and England and all these European countries were really just colonial, just dominating and establishing these practices of separating us. And you know, it comes from the Spanish-speaking community or the Latin community. Spain, you know, it has its history with Morocco, you know, and how people, even within Spain, you have the separation between those that are in Madrid versus those that are in Barcelona. And it's always about dividing. If it's not language, it's the shade of your skin. And all those things have been transferred to us. And it's really generational trauma that we're dealing with today. You know, it's things that have been institutionalized into our culture. And we continue to uphold these things that are our own demise, all for the benefit of those who believe in white supremacy.
I think sport is a perfect vehicle to get these messages across. And I'll use myself as an example. When I was playing at Newcastle United, I was sitting in a dressing room that I was 5 feet away from Faustino Asprilla from Colombia. I was 5 feet away from Philippe Albert of Belgium. Steve Howie, who is from the northeast of England representing Newcastle. Rob Lee, who is from London, the south of England, playing up in the northeast. And every weekend, every Saturday, we went out into the field with a shared responsibility to get the best out of each other. I was outside a gas station in Newcastle, and 3 young white men come walking down the hill shouting racist abuse at me. As they get to about 25 yards away, they recognize who I am, start singing my name and asking for autographs. I politely declined. But it spoke to my duality. From 100 yards away, I was a Black man worthy of only the most racist, demeaning diatribe you could hear. From 25 yards away, I was a person worthy to be lauded, to have his name sang. And that spoke to who I was, my existence at the time, and the platform that I had.
You know, I think for us, it's really a moment to use our platform to voice our position in how we're not going to take this anymore, how we're not going to be quiet about it and either shut up and play or just go to work or you know, I apart from being a nonprofit president of a nonprofit organization, I work in the healthcare field. And and one of the things I paid attention really closely to that happened just last week was a Black woman named Dawn Wooten, who brought attention to the sterilization that was happening in detention centers of Black and brown women that are being held in these detention centers. And it was a Black woman that brought attention to this issue that is supposedly just affecting the Latino community. And it's, how do you use any soapbox or any megaphone that you have to stand up and voice your position in this? You know, there's a very hard line drawn on the ground right now, and there's no more of this kind of flip-flopping between sides. You need to either be on one side of this or the other. And it's not a time to, you know, just shut up and play or just worry about your nonprofit. There's a moment that is happening right now that is time to witness and really just unify behind bringing down these structures that are just working against us all.
We have to challenge media's portrayal on so many of these issues. Stephen spoke about, let's say, Black youth confronting Latino vendors, and how that is replayed in the media to send a message, a message that is meant to divide. Again, an incredibly powerful language Stephen uses. It's surgical in how it's used and employed. Things like black on black crime are another popular phrases used in the media that only serve to further criminalize a community. And I say that if you're white murders or murders of white people here in the US, 85% of them are committed by other white people. Yet we never hear of white on white crime in the media. Black on black crime, you can hear repeated daily, depending on where you go to for your news source.
And then one of the ways that I suppose we have all agreed is the best way to just challenge this and just challenge social injustice on a whole is through sports. And I mean, Shaka, Stephen just literally spoke of his almost, you know, the duality of who he is in the eyes of other people as he was as a football player here in England. And I spoke about it with Raheem Sterling. I mean, Shaka recently spoke to Weston McKennie as well, who's now at Juventus. And he had something interesting, Shaka, to you to say something along the lines of the fact that, you know, Monday to Friday, he's just a regular Black kid, you know, but on the weekends, that's when he becomes an athlete. You know, it's almost like Clark Kent to Superman, because in the eyes of, say, the fans there, and especially now probably the fans in Italy that we know that has a history of racism there too. And that is the duality of it. So Stephen, you know the platform that, you know, athletes have, and you probably know the power of sports. So why is it that you chose to go through the sports avenue to do what you're doing and achieve what you're doing, as opposed to, say, just start a regular charity that would still be able to probably feed and educate some of the kids that you have been doing?
I think, you know, the friendship that Shaka and I have developed, for example, is prime example why we've selected specifically soccer, specifically football, as the vehicle for our platform and for our program. It has a remarkable ability to connect people. And, you know, it could connect people that have ill intentions, or it can connect people that want to do good in the world. You know, like I touched in the beginning of this, there are literal neo-Nazi groups, literal white supremacist groups in supporter groups across football around the world, in MLS, you know, and in Europe. You see these very organized groups that supposedly are just there to cheer for the team. But when the opposing team scores and it's Mario Balotelli, for example, you hear all these racial slurs and you hear all these things. And it's just now that's being amplified, but it's not that it's just now happening. It's just that it's now being captured. And it's, how do you use that same level of organization for good? How can you use this sport that so many people around the world just are glued to? You know, the World Cup is such a huge platform. Imagine that using, hopefully, when the World Cup comes around again, people are still talking about Black Lives Matter. The patches are still on the jerseys. They're still kneeling before the game to continue this conversation. And just continue. That's so important, to just not give up the conversation, not lose the momentum that we have right now.
I almost want to say what the end goal is, but I think we all definitely have the same end goal. But what steps do you want to see, and what kind of parts do you want to see the Latino community play in this kind of a fight?
Really, one of our main objectives, a lot of people think that we're just interested in developing youth soccer players to go into the professional world and play. But even professional soccer players that we bring to speak to the kids through Zoom calls like this in today's world, tell our youth the importance of educating themselves and the importance of finding those intersections between themselves and their fellow academy mates in Honduras, or their fellow academy mates in Guatemala, and what we hope will be in Trinidad and Tobago with AFJA's, future aspirations to connect across the Caribbean and into other parts of Central America. And it's really just, how do you use this sport to inspire youth to be the future leaders of their community? It's not so much about developing just soccer players. It's about developing citizens and developing the people that are going to go on, receive an education, professional training, become just doctors, teachers, sports broadcasters, and go back to their communities to be the change that we all wish to see in our world.
Again, excuse my ignorance here. It's sometimes a little bit intimidating for somebody like me, because I don't speak Spanish. So it's how do I get involved? How can I help? How can I be a part of that solution as well?
Shaka, one of the things that I spoke a little bit a while ago is, for example, the crisis at the border and immigration reform. And one of the things that is not often portrayed is that immigration is a Black issue as well. There are Haitian, there are African immigrants currently detained in the same detention centers with Salvadorans, Hondurans, Guatemalans, Mexicans. We're going through a moment right now where we are intentionally being divided, but that's really not the case. What the Black community could do, I think, is recognize that the same issues that Latino and Latinx communities are fighting for are also affecting Black members of the community. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of that duality. It's that intersection is recognizing organizations like Raíces Texas, an organization that provides legal aid to people going through detention centers and immigration proceedings. Border Angels in San Diego, who literally hikes the same immigration trails in the deserts of San Diego, Arizona, and southwestern United States, putting water canteens for the people that are just dying of thirst. And there's real organizations that need help. And if the Black community could find that duality and understand that, like I said, there are Black immigrants in these detention centers side by side with people of the Latinx community, then we start to amplify both causes.
Perfect. Well, Stephen, we have to thank you so much. We already definitely celebrate everything you do and continue to do. And I hope that just talks like these just help both communities, of course, both communities that gave me life, that, I hold dear, just bring us together and realize, the same thing that Shaka and I keep preaching, that this is not, an only Black lives issue. This is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue that really and truly affects us all. It doesn't matter if you're Black, purple, pink, brown, yellow, it affects us all. And at some point, we all have to stand up together in order to actually win or get a victory against this fight that really and truly has been going on since the beginning of time. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Shaka, as always, you're my bro. And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll definitely be having a lot more of these conversations to see how we can truly just bring all communities together as we continue this fight against, social injustice and racism. Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.